everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Always exciting.
Yeah, so today we're going deep into the Colorado wilderness.
Right.
And we're going to explore something that you might not expect about forests.
Okay,
You ready to dive in?
let's go.
Okay, so you know those gorgeous Colorado forests, right?
Yeah.
All those trees, you'd think they're just like soaking up carbon, right?
Right, makes sense.
Like sponges helping to fight climate change.
Yeah, that's all we always hear.
Exactly. But a recent report from Colorado State University kind of dropped a bombshell.
Yeah, it did.
Get this, it turns out Colorado's forests are actually releasing more carbon than they're absorbing.
Yeah, that was a pretty shocking finding.
It is.
Our forests are now a net source of carbon emissions.
So how do they even figure this out?
Well, they use this really detailed data.
Okay.
It's from the Forest Inventory and Analysis Program. Basically, it's like a giant census for trees.
Oh, wow.
And they track changes in the forests over time.
So like a tree shrekker?
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, but why are the forests releasing so much carbon? I thought absorbing it was like their whole thing.
Well, it is. You know how trees absorb CO2 as they grow?
Right.
But then when they die and decompose, that carbon gets released back into the atmosphere.
Okay.
It's like a natural cycle.
Right.
But here's the thing. Disturbances like insect outbreaks, they're making that release happen way faster than the absorption.
Hold on, insects.
Yeah.
Like little bugs are causing more of a ruckus than wildfires?
Believe it or not, yeah, the report found that insects and disease,
Wow.
especially those bark beetles, have impacted a much larger area of forest than wildfires and harvesting and weather combined.
Really? Beetles having a bigger impact than wildfires?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right?
That's wild. Tell me more about that.
Well, these outbreaks are partly fueled by, you guessed it, climate change.
Oh, no.
Yeah, droughts and warmer temperatures, they stress the trees out, making them more vulnerable to attacks from those beetles.
So climate change is weakening the trees,
Right.
making them easy targets for the beetles,
Exactly.
which leads to more dead trees.
Yeah.
And boom, more carbon released into the atmosphere.
Just a chain reaction.
It's a whole chain reaction.
It is, and it's not just a small amount of carbon either.
Oh.
The report says Colorado's forests and wood products store a whopping 1,558 teragrams of carbon.
What?
Teragrams.
Help me wrap my head around that number.
Okay, think of it this way. That's like every single car in America driving for a year straight, just in carbon.
Whoa, that's a lot of carbon.
It is.
So what does all this mean for Colorado? Is it just doom and gloom for our forests?
Not necessarily. The report also highlighted some potential solutions.
Okay, good.
And we'll dig into those in a bit. But first, let's take a closer look at how this carbon release varies across the state.
Okay.
It's actually a pretty complex picture.
So it's not just like a blanket statement that all of Colorado's forests are in trouble.
Right. Some high-elevation forests are actually still doing okay. They're acting as carbon sinks,
Okay.
meaning they're absorbing more than they're releasing.
Gotcha.
But other areas, especially those hit hard by those insect outbreaks and droughts, are really struggling. It's like a patchwork of carbon gains and losses across the state.
A forest patchwork.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to think about it. So even within one state, you have this whole range of what's happening, from healthy forests to ones that are in serious trouble.
Exactly. And that makes finding solutions and managing these forests even more complex. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay, so it's a complicated situation, but hopefully there are some things we can do to help these struggling forests, right?
Absolutely. There are definitely things we can do, and we'll get into those solutions in just a minute.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so we talked about the problem, those poor beetle-ridden forests releasing all that carbon.
Right.
But what can we actually do about it? What are some solutions to help these forests get back on track?
Well, the first thing that probably pops into your mind is planting more trees, right?
Yeah, that seems like the most obvious solution. More trees, more carbon absorption, problem solved.
It definitely seems logical, but it's not quite as simple as just scattering seeds and hoping for the best. Reforestation could definitely play a role, but it's not a quick fix.
So planting trees isn't a simple fix. What makes it so complicated?
Well, you're not just planting trees, you're rebuilding an entire ecosystem. You have to consider what kind of trees to plant, where to plant them, how to make sure they survive,
Right.
and how they'll fit into the existing landscape. It's a whole process.
So it's more like strategic tree planting, not just random seed tossing.
Exactly. And it's not just about carbon either. We have to think about the whole picture. You know, wildlife habitat, recreation, wildfire risk,
Yeah.
and even the economic impacts on the surrounding communities. It's all connected.
That makes sense. You can't just focus on one piece of the puzzle without considering the whole picture.
Right. And here's another interesting twist. The report also highlighted the potential of something called forest thinning.
Forest thinning.
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound kind of counterintuitive? We're trying to plant more trees, not cut them down?
I know it seems strange, but hear me out. Sometimes strategically removing some trees, especially those that are already weakened or overcrowded, can actually make the forest healthier in the long run.
Okay, so you're basically giving the remaining trees more room to breathe and thrive.
Exactly. It's like creating a little more space in a crowded room.
Yeah.
Plus, thinning can also reduce the risk of those huge catastrophic wildfires
Oh,
that
right.
release massive amounts of carbon.
So it's kind of a preventative measure. You're thinning out the forest to prevent a bigger carbon release from a wildfire down the line.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, managing the forests in a way that promotes their health and resilience and ultimately helps them store more carbon in the long run.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about the number of trees, it's about the overall health of the forest ecosystem.
Right. And speaking of those wildfires,
Uh-oh.
there's another layer to this whole story that we need to consider. Remember those massive wildfires Colorado experienced a few years back?
Oh, yeah, those were devastating.
Well, the report doesn't even include those.
Oh, wow, so the carbon release situation is probably even worse than the report suggests.
Most likely, yeah, those recent fires probably tipped the scales even further towards carbon release. It's a reminder that this is an ongoing issue and we need to constantly adapt our strategies as new challenges arise.
It's like we have this detailed map of the terrain, but the landscape itself is constantly changing.
That's a great analogy, and it highlights the need for ongoing research and collaboration.
Yeah.
We need scientists, policymakers, and land managers all working together to navigate this complex and ever-changing landscape.
It sounds like teamwork is key here. We can't address a challenge as big as climate change in isolation.
Absolutely. This report is a call to action, a reminder that we need to be proactive and innovative in our approach to forest management.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from the surprising discovery that Colorado's forests are now a net carbon source to the role of those pesky beetles, the importance of strategic forest management, and the impact of those recent wildfires.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but before we get too overwhelmed, let's shift gears and talk about something a little more hopeful, the potential role of those harvested wood products in all of this.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I remember you mentioned that earlier. Even the wood we use can play a role in carbon storage, right?
Exactly. It might seem counterintuitive, but even those harvested wood products can actually help lock away carbon for decades, even centuries.
So we're talking about like furniture and buildings, even books. All that stuff made from wood can actually be a form of carbon storage.
It is, think of it this way, that carbon captured by the tree during its life, it's still locked away in the wood even after it's been harvested and turned into something else.
So by choosing wood products, especially those made from sustainably harvested wood, we're actually making a climate-friendly choice.
Exactly. It's a way to keep that carbon out of the atmosphere for a longer period of time. It's part of this idea of a circular economy, using and reusing resources as much as possible.
So it's not just about what happens in the forest, but also how we use and manage those resources afterwards.
Right.
It all ties back to that interconnectedness we talked about earlier, but let's be real. It's easy to feel kind of overwhelmed by all this,
Yeah.
Like, what can we as individuals really do to make a difference when it comes to these huge, complex problems like climate change?
I hear you. It can definitely feel daunting. But here's the thing. Even small actions, when they're multiplied across the community, can have a ripple effect.
So those little choices we make in our daily lives actually do add up.
Absolutely. We can all play a part by supporting sustainable forestry practices, choosing wood products wisely, and advocating for policies that promote forest health and resilience.
So it's about being conscious consumers, thinking about where our wood products come from, and supporting companies that prioritize sustainability, and also using our voices to advocate for change on a larger scale.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of simply staying informed. The more we understand these issues, the better equipped we are to make choices that align with our values and contribute to a more sustainable future.
Knowledge is power, as they say. Well, this deep dive into Colorado's forests has definitely been a journey. We started off thinking of forests as these carbon-absorbing heroes, and now we've uncovered them in much more complex reality.
It's been quite the eye-opener.
It has.
We've explored the surprising finding that Colorado's forests are now a net source of carbon emissions, the role of those unexpected villains, the bark beetles, and the importance of proactive and sustainable forest management.
And we've learned that even seemingly small choices like buying a table made from reclaimed wood or supporting a local tree planting initiative can actually contribute to the solution. It's not just about what happens in the forest, but also how we use and manage those resources afterwards.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It is.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. The future of our forests and our planet depends on the choices we make today. So let's choose wisely, let's choose to be informed, and let's choose to act.
Well said. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. We hope you learned something new, gained a fresh perspective on our forests, and most importantly, feel empowered to make a difference. Remember, even amidst the complexity, there's always hope, and there's always something we can do.